For nearly a century, science fiction writers and Hollywood directors have sold us the exact same tantalizing vision of the future. A person steps out into their backyard, straps a compact backpack onto their shoulders, presses a button, and with roaring engines soars vertically into the sky, leaving morning city traffic jams far below. From Iron Man to James Bond, the personal jetpack seemed like the ultimate pinnacle of individual freedom. In 2008, Time magazine named this device one of the 50 best inventions of the year, and major global news outlets vied to declare the dream has finally become reality. A New Zealand-based company called Martin Aircraft Company introduced an aircraft that was slated to go on open sale. We were promised that within just a couple of years, anyone, from first responders and firefighters to ordinary millionaires, would be able to buy their very own personal flying backpack for the price of a high-end SUV. More than 30 years passed from the moment the first blueprint sketch was drawn. $125 million in investments were burned. Dozens of working prototypes were built. Hundreds of hours of test flights were conducted. And the company itself went public on the stock exchange with great fanfare. And how did it all end? In March 2021, Martin Aircraft quietly announced its complete liquidation. All patents, technical servers, blueprints, and the final 7 prototypes, once valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, were put up for a New Zealand auction with a starting bid of just $1. How did a unique, lone garage genius who created in his backyard what entire aerospace corporations couldn't achieve fall into the trap of venture capital? Why did the laws of physics and aerodynamics flatly refuse to obey the marketers? And why did a project that actually flew end up as one of the most high-profile financial failures in the history of personal aviation? Let's break down this tale of garage triumph and corporate crash, piece by piece. Chapter 1. A Garage Genius and 30 Years of Searching. To understand the scale of this drama, we have to travel back to 1981, to the New Zealand city of Christchurch. A young engineering student named Glenn Martin was sitting in a local pub with his friends, debating the future. The conversation turned to personal jetpacks. His friends laughed, claiming that a jetpack was just a fairy tale. After all, the rocket packs of the era, powered by hydrogen peroxide, could fly for barely 30 seconds before running completely out of fuel, leaving the pilot to drop like a stone. Martin took that challenge as a personal insult. He went home, stepped into his garage, and asked himself a simple question. Why does a backpack have to be rocket-powered? Martin's idea was both simple and revolutionary. If rocket jets require too much hot fuel, and a conventional helicopter rotor is too dangerous and bulky, you need a middle ground: ducted fans. When you place a two-bladed propeller inside a special aerodynamic duct, or shroud, something amazing happens. The airflow is optimized. Thrust increases by 30% for the exact same propeller diameter, and the blades become completely enclosed, dramatically boosting safety. Unlike modern electric drones, powerful and lightweight lithium batteries simply did not exist in the 80s and 90s. So Martin decided to equip his craft with a classic two-stroke gasoline engine. Imagine this titanic effort, 30 years, no venture capital funds, no army of marketers, just working in his spare time, funded by his own savings and the patience of his wife Hazel. Martin hand-assembled carbon fiber frames, cast custom parts, engineered ducted fans, and conducted deadly first tests right in his backyard, tying the craft to a tree with ropes. By the mid-2000s, his garage project had evolved into a fully functional flying machine. The Martin Jetpack weighed around 140 kilograms, featured a custom 2-liter V4 engine producing 200 horsepower, and could lift a human into the air. By the way, if you want to see what these actual prototypes looked like with your own eyes, from the early wooden frames in the garage to the final aircraft and photos from their liquidation auction, make sure to watch until the very end. I've compiled all the rare archive photos and test footage for you at the end of the video. Now, back to our story. Chapter 2. Technical shock, how it worked, and the deceptive success. Let me step away from economics for a moment and look at the engineering, because from a technical standpoint, the Martin Jetpack was a genuine piece of art. First, it wasn't really a backpack. Unlike devices strapped directly onto a pilot's back, Martin's machine was more like an ultra-compact stand-up helicopter. The pilot stepped inside a rugged carbon fiber safety cage, strapped in with a 5-point harness, and grabbed 2 control joysticks. Second, the power plant. The heart of the machine was a unique V-shaped 4-cylinder 2-stroke engine built on the foundation of racing motors. It delivered an astonishing 200 horsepower, while weighing just 60 kilograms, spinning 2 counter-rotating ducted fans at 6,000 RPM. Third, performance figures that stunned the world. Flight time, up to 30 minutes, compared to 30 seconds for rocket belts. Range, up to 50 kilometers.
Top speed, up to 74 kilometers per hour. Flight ceiling, up to 1,000 meters above the ground. And most importantly, safety. Martin knew that if the engine failed at an altitude of 100 meters, the pilot would perish. So the design incorporated a patented ballistic parachute system. In an emergency, a pyrotechnic charge fired the parachute in a fraction of a second, allowing the craft and pilot to float safely to the ground, even from an altitude as low as 30 meters. In 2011, the company conducted its flagship demonstration flight. An unmanned prototype carrying a mannequin soared to an altitude of 1.5 kilometers, successfully completed its test program, deployed its parachute, and landed gently. Videos of these tests went viral across the globe. Newspapers ran headlines, "Science fiction has become reality." Investors from around the world flooded Glenn Martin's phone lines. People with suitcases of cash started appearing on his garage doorstep. Yet, right at that moment, at the absolute peak of fame, a fatal tailspin began. Chapter 3: The Venture Trap and Loss of Control. When you build a prototype in your garage, you are answerable only to yourself. But when you want to turn that prototype into a commercial product, you need tens of millions of dollars for certification, manufacturing lines, and engineering staff. Glenn Martin made the classic mistake of many great inventors. He let venture capital into his business under terms that gradually stripped him of his voting power. In 2014, the company needed massive funds to prepare for an initial public offering. An investor appeared on the horizon, the Chinese investment conglomerate, Guangqi Science. They poured over $40 million into Martin Aircraft, acquiring a controlling stake of over 51%. The new owners and hired executives applied standard corporate logic. They declared, "Forget about private buyers and thrill seekers. The retail consumer market is far too complex and risky. We will sell jetpacks to government services, firefighters, search and rescue teams, coast guards, and the military." On paper, the plan sounded flawless. The price of a single unit was set at $200,000. High-profile memorandums of understanding were signed with the Dubai Civil Defense. The sheikhs even ordered 20 units for fighting fires in skyscrapers. In 2015, Martin Aircraft went public on the Australian Securities Exchange, ASX, with immense hype. The market capitalization of the startup instantly surged to over $100 million. However, while executives in expensive suits traveled to international expos and gave endless interviews, a tragedy was unfolding inside the company itself. Glenn Martin, the man who had dedicated 35 years of his life to this project, began to realize the business was veering completely off course. Instead of resolving the machine's core physical flaws, the corporation was spending millions on marketing and maintaining an inflated staff. In 2015, unable to endure the conflict with new management and Chinese investors, Glenn Martin resigned and walked away from the company he had built. The garage genius was gone. All that remained was a corporate shell promising investors a miracle. Chapter 4: Physics Strikes Back: Why the Jetpack Couldn't Go Mass Market. With the founder gone, the remaining engineers faced a harsh reality. It is one thing to shoot a flashy video with a mannequin for investors. It is a completely different challenge to pass rigorous aviation authority safety certifications for real humans flying in real cities. And here, the laws of physics dealt the company a crushing blow. First issue: acoustic nightmare. A 2-stroke, 2-liter V4 engine operating at 6,000 RPM produced an ear-splitting noise level exceeding 120 decibels. That is equivalent to a jet turbine running a few meters away from you. The pilot and everyone nearby were effectively deafened.
Using it in residential areas or urban firefighting was out of the question. People nearby simply couldn't hear emergency response commands. Second issue, thermodynamics and weight. The machine ended up bulky. On paper, it was called a jetpack, but in reality, its dry weight exceeded 200 kilograms. To lift that kind of mass, it required more and more fuel. The more fuel you load, the heavier the craft becomes. It was a vicious cycle from which engineers could find no escape. Third issue, aerodynamics and handling. Unlike a helicopter, which uses a swash plate mechanism, or a multicopter where flight computers instantly adjust the RPM of individual motors, the Martin Jetpack relied on just two large ducted fans. Controlling it in crosswinds or turbulence between city buildings proved catastrophically difficult. In 2016, a test prototype crashed into a lake. The pilot was unhurt, but the aircraft was completely destroyed. Aviation regulators, chiefly the FAA in the US and the CAA in New Zealand, took one look at this setup and issued their verdict. This craft was far too dangerous for general use.
Operating it would require a full helicopter pilot's license. Think about it. If flying a jetpack requires spending 2 years in training, passing hundreds of hours of theory, and getting a commercial helicopter license, why would anyone choose a noisy, unstable 200-kilogram cage over a real conventional helicopter? The consumer market shrank to zero. Chapter 5. Bankruptcy and a $1 auction. By 2018, the company's financial reserves were rapidly draining away. Sales never actually began. Not a single one of the 20 jetpacks ordered by Dubai was ever delivered. The company simply could not pass safety certification. The Chinese investors, realizing the project had turned into a bottomless money pit, cut off the funding tap. The company's stock on the exchange plummeted to penny stock status. Engineers resigned en masse, and the factory in Christchurch sat devoid of orders. In 2020, production was halted entirely, and on March 23, 2021, came the official denouement. Martin Aircraft Company Limited was formally declared bankrupt and placed into liquidation. Liquidators from Grant Thornton entered the abandoned factory to find a sobering scene. $80 million in direct investments, 35 years of development, gigabytes of proprietary SolidWorks blueprints, test rigs, and 7 fully assembled flying prototypes were simply gathering dust in warehouses. All of the company's assets were put up for international liquidation auctions. A story that began as a magnificent human dream of conquering the skies ended in liquidations on a New Zealand online auction site. One of the key P-12 prototypes, the very machine that once dominated global news headlines, was sold to a private collector for a mere $158,000. Other damaged components and spare parts were auctioned off with starting bids of just $1. Even the local Canterbury Museum, which tried to buy a prototype to preserve this chapter of New Zealand engineering history, was outbid by private buyers. The dream dissolved into private garages and personal collections. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more deep dive investigations into complex technologies, high-stakes corporate drama, and the dramatic collapses of ambitious startups, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel right now. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions are more than just numbers. They are the ultimate support that allows us to keep researching, writing, and creating this high-quality content for you. Also, drop a comment down below and let us know, what tech failure, forgotten invention, or hyped-up startup story would you like us to uncover in our next video? We read all of your ideas, and the best ones directly inspire our upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next investigation.